Good morning to you all. I hope I am audible. Dr. Jose, am I
Yes,
audible?
yes.
So, a very good morning to Dr. Shyam Vishwanath, Director KFRI, Dr. P.A. Jose, my colleague and scientist at KFRI. And we are into the next webinar talk from the Kerala Forest Research Institute. Dr. P.A. Jose will be talking on a very interesting topic today. Are threatened plants really threatened? Reassessment and restoration of threatened plants to commonness, a Kerala scenario. That's the title of his talk. It's my privilege to invite Dr. P.A. Jose to make the presentation. Dr. P.A. Jose has started his research career in the Jawaharlal Nehru Tropical Botanical Garden and Research Institute, Palud, Thiruvananthapuram, in the year 1987. He has got a long period of service at JNTBGRI, and he joined the Kerala Forest Research Institute in 2010. Currently, he is the principal scientist and head of the tree physiology department of Kerala Forest Research Institute. He did his college education in St. Thomas College, Thrissur. He did his PhD on the population structure, dynamics, and conservation of endemic and threatened trees of Western Ghats, uh, for which he was awarded the doctorate degree by the University of Kerala, Thiruvananthapuram. He has 33 years of experience in ex situ and in situ plant conservation, nursery and seed management, ecology, reproductive biology, and restoration of endemic and threatened trees of the Western Ghats. He has to his credit more than 70 publications in national and international journals. In addition, he has authored book, brochures, training manual, and course materials. He has developed a database of RUT plants of southern Western Ghats, and now a new book is in the pipeline. It is a handbook on woody plants endemic to Kerala. It is part of the research and extension project he is carrying out now. He has served as resource person in species recovery research, field plant germplasm development, nursery, and seed management. He has served as research supervisor for more than 15 MSc dissertations and currently guiding 4 students for their PhD program in botany. He has attended 3 months internship in horticulture at Royal Botanical Gardens, Kew, England. He has registered 3 new ornamental germplasm at NBPGR, New Delhi. He was awarded the Young Scientist Award by STUC, Government of Kerala, and Indian Association of Angiosperm Taxonomy for best scientific paper presentations and under the environmental science and forestry, biodiversity conservation study areas. His research currently focus on climate change impact on endemic and threatened trees, and also restoration of threatened and non-timber forest product yielding trees, and seed physiology of recalcitrant seeds. I welcome Dr. P.A. Jose to make his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saji, for your introduction. Start our presentation. Good morning to all and welcome to webinar on Are Threatened Plants Really Threatened? Reassessment and Restoration of Threatened Plants to Commonness, a Kerala Scenario. As you know, the rare, endangered and threatened plants or red listed plants or collectively termed as threatened plants are one of the significant group of plants in our biodiversity. These plants are characterized with a smaller population size, distributed in as isolated patches. Moreover, required specialized ecological niches for their survival and growth. As these plants passing in a very higher pace and effective conservation measures are required for its sustenance as well as resource-based utilization from the untimely endangerment. With this brief introduction, we will go to the details of the presentations. As you know, the Kerala state harboring an excellent range of plant diversity, endemics, and threatened species composition. Though the state has a land area of below 1.2% of the total geographical area of the country, it accommodates nearly 29% of the flora of the country. The Agasthyamala, Anamala high ranges, and Silent Valley, Wayanad are identified as the hotspots of plant diversity and endemism within the state. The state also holds flowering species around 5,200 species, of which 4,300 species are indigenous. Regarding the endemics, around 1,600 plants are endemic to peninsular India, and around 900 species are endemic to Western Ghats region. Regarding the RET plants composition, state has a distribution of around 550 RET plants, of which 100 plants are exclusive distribution within the state. And regarding the endemics, around 270 species covering different life forms are distributed within the Kerala only, of which 53 species are woody nature. Apart from its conservational significance, many RET plants have different economical as well as ecological significance. So, for example, the Gluta travangurica is also known as Indian redwood. It's a highly timber valued species, also known as Indian redwood. Likewise, the Dipterocarpus bodyloni, so one of the softwood. These two species have been severely extracted before independence, and that itself leads to reduction in population. Likewise, the sandalwood tree, Dicyphyllum malabaricum, the Indian cedar tree, as well as the Quigodendron pinnatum, the wood oil is extracted for medicinal and industrial purpose. The Humboldtia group, especially Humboldtia bodyloni, these are wild legume trees. The seeds are eaten locally by the local people, as well as these immature fruits of Phoclinocolla mijonis is used as a vegetable. In addition, many of these RETs are either NPS yielding plants or medicinal values. Particularly the wild nutmegs, these are the Myristica species. The seed oil is extracted as non-timber forest produce, particularly by the tribal community as their livelihood. Further, this Hypnocarpus, many of the Hypnocarpus species coming under this category. So the seed oil is extracted. The seeds are collected for the seed oil purpose. Likewise, the cinnamon species, the bark for the spice industry, the Salacia are the medicinal importance, and many of the wild Syzygium are also edible value. Another aspect of significance is on the biotic interactions of the RET species. It's a case study. We have conducted studies on many species, of which Phoclinocolla mijonis have around 20 species insect incidents. So many of these RETs not studied for these biotic interactions. Likewise, the Gluta travangurica, around 14 insect species were associated during the dynamics. So these are very important. These have either served as the pollinators or foragers during the life history or life cycle of the species. And another significant thing is about the RETs. Almost all RETs are distributed in the different ecosystems and vegetation types. Here, from riparian to Myristica stands, hilltop mountain, sholas, sagracus, evergreen. Number of species have its own specific functions in their respective ecosystem. For example, this Vatica chinensis, it's a one RET species seen in our sagracus. The major distribution is only in the sagracus. Despite their ecological, economical, conservation values, this species, some species of RETs have some uncertainty or some lack of clarity or some ambiguities existing. This ambiguity is mainly on two factors. That is on the threat status available to this species, and another is on the concept of rarity. That is, in many instances, rarity standards assigned become deviated from the original concept given by the IUCN, and threat status is given based on the local knowledge of a species by individuals and institutions. As a result, same species may have different status. Simultaneously, the current status of the species may be lacking. So there is an ambiguity existing among the researchers which status to be followed. So this kind of deviation from the original concept made some ambiguity and also affected the reliability of the RETs on their respective status. Likewise, another uncertainty is on the concept. There are different outlook on the concept of red listed species. A school of thought is on this conservation status assigned to species is not realistic, as it is based on taxonomic or herbarium literature. Another is the concept itself is wrong, as plant rarity is a part of evolution. Some people are saying that as rarity stems from both physical and biological constraints of a species, prioritize those plants overexploited by human or by habitat-based issues. Ignore the biological constraints as it is a part of life cycle of a species. So in this juncture, we have to go for the what is a rare species and what is the concept of rare species. And this confusion is often makes the question, are threatened plants really threatened? Let us go to the definition given. The pioneer researcher Drury is a conservation biologist from Fraser. He defined the concept of rarity and a rare species. According to him, a rare species is that occurs in widely separated small subpopulations, so that interbreeding between the subpopulation is really reduced or it is restricted to a single population. Almost a similar definition is also given by the IUCN. So if we give a closer look into these definitions, you can see that many of species in the Western Ghats having smaller population size and distribution is also scattered as isolated populations. So once it is established as a rare species, actually the untimely extinction or local endangerment of a species is started. Extinction is not an abnormal fate in the life cycle of a species. Charles Darwin, the origin of species, it's a natural process in the life of a species. It is inevitable for evolution of a new species. But the present problem is the present day environment or habitat changes are so drastic, and species couldn't get evolutionary time span, and this lead to the rarity and untimely endangerment or extinction of the species. So there are several causes for the untimely endangerment of the species, are also known as extinction-prone species, the characteristics of extinction-prone species. It is estimated that present-day extinction rate is 1,000 to 10,000 times higher than that of the natural extinction process. So that we can imagine how fast is the present-day extinction process. Among the various causes, the topmost reason is the habitat destruction. That is fragmentation of the habitats. Many of our forest landscapes are fragmented. So once it is fragmented, the species populations are all fragmented and compartmentalized in some particular areas. So once it is compartmentalized, the gene flow will be arrested. So it cannot face fluctuations because of its instability of small populations. Many of the species are overexploited, like tree ferns, rhododendrons, magnolias, various orchids. So the species become fragmented, developmental activities. So the island biogeography, the theory island biogeography itself evolved from this, the compartmentalization, where the species in certain niches will act as an island in which it will face more vulnerability for endangerment. Another reason is pointing towards the environmental factors, mainly on the climate irregularities or disturbances or climate change impact. Each species have its own ecological amplitude to cope up with the harsh or vagaries of the environmental factors. So many times this ecological tolerance, the amplitude will be beyond that the species. So it will affect this or facing this vulnerability. For example, as a result of this ecological sensitivity, species will be distinction in distribution can be noticed. Some species seen in some continents, some species seen in other continents, So there may be a disappearance of the species in between. This is maybe one of the reasons due to the climate change. There is also parallel theories there. There is a continental drift, but this climate change is also supporting this disappearance of species and distinction of the species. Many of the dipterocarps, Opia, the major parental stock is in the Malayan Peninsula. You can also see in the Western Ghats. Like Gluta triangle, these are monotypic genera. Gluta, Travanguria in the Western Ghats. Many of the Gluta species are in the Malayan Peninsula, in the marshy habitat. So Acrenoculum missionis, one in India, one in Sri Lanka. So this kind of distinction is also the outcome of this environmental impact or climate change impact. There are a number of factors pointing towards the, based on these biological constraints or biological factors. That is like low frequency of flowering. Sometimes the flowering intervals may be irregular, or it may be 3 to 4 years for a peak flowering. This is Dipterocarpus, and many of our species like Cynomyxa tuna having this irregularity in flowering. So this is indicating this species is facing some local endangerment. And another factor is on the seed with the low viability, that is recalcitrant nature of the seeds. Many of our evergreen or riparian species have these recalcitrant seeds. So this environmental problems, the reduction of soil moisture content will lead to the viability loss. So the present day vagaries or environmental problems leading to these species to recalcitrant nature. So the number of recalcitrant species is increasing because of these irregularities in our environmental conditions. Many of the Myristica species in Dizoxylum, Bacteria, Hopia, Aporos are also including in this recalcitrant group. Another is pointing towards the low dispersal ability. You know, the species should have wider dispersal capacity. There should be well mechanized dispersal strategies required. Then only seeds will be distributed to separate places and cross-pollination will be more effective, gene exchange will be more effective. Once there is no dispersal mechanism, seeds will be deposited nearby habitats and thereby the niches, the particular species will be clustered, or that will make facilitate self breeding within the individuals. So that has to be that such type of low dispersal ability species also indicating this untimely endangerment. Another is the pollinator loss. You know, many of these species have specific pollinators. So the absence of pollinator may also affect the viable food set that will lead to the untimely endangerment. And the poor colonizing and the regenerative strategies. Species may not have vegetative expansion or vegetative sprouting, so that it also makes some problems or leading to the untimely endangerment of the species. So in addition to these environmental problems, some genetic linked factors are also influencing this untimely endangerment of the species. So the lower population size are attributed by several factors. Among these, the inbreeding depression, the homozygous nature of the population due to the recessive allele action, this will also add this untimely endangerment of the species. So in this juncture, we should follow IUCN guidelines how to assess threat plants. The IUCN gives clear-cut directions how to assess the species. There are 8 to 9 threat status are there, of which critical endangered, vulnerable are the top 3 threatened categories. These are based on these critical endangered species face extremely high risk of extinction in the immediate future, and endangered are facing extinction in near future, and vulnerable are facing extinction in the medium term future. Each category has criterion from A to E and also sub-criterion. So A is representing the habitat threat. How this population size is declining by the last 10 years or last 20 years. So the criterion is number A represents the habitat or population size reduction, and B is regarding the geographical range. What is the extent of occurrence of the species and the area of occupancy of the species? The B1 represents the extent of occurrence and the area of occupancy is the B2. And below this B1, there are different Sub-criteria is also there from A to C. The C represents the population size numbers, that is number of adult individuals. There are two classes for that. Number of adult individuals are less than 250, sometimes less than 50. Based on that, the criterion C and D are developed. And E is indicating the probability of extinction in the wild. So these threat categories, these criteria are worked out for effective threat assessments of the species. Here we can see a precise representation of this criteria using for giving the threat status. In the case of critical endangered, the species occurrence, extent of occurrence will be less than 100 kilometers square. And the area of occupancy will be less than 10 kilometers square. Number of mature individuals will be 250. So likewise, threat category of endangered or vulnerable. So finally, one species is assessed like here, Hypnocarpus macrocarpus, which is endangered, and the criteria is B1 plus 2AC. Here, B1 represents the geographical range, that is extent of occurrence is less than 5,000 kilometers, and 2A is also in the geographical range, but the number of locations is less than 10, and C is the adult individuals is less than 300. Likewise, we have to assess the threat status so that we can avoid the ambiguity and we can give the real status assessment. IUCN acts either at the global assessment of the species or in the national or regional level. Here you can see that Echina indica, so globally it is endangered, but is regionally India, Kerala, it is in the verge of extinction. So there are some directions how to submit assessments. There are data of the species along with the distribution map submitted to Species Information Service. Species information, that data will be analyzed, and there is a Species Survival Commission covering a specialist group of individuals. They will evaluate the assessments, and later the assessment will pass over to the Red List Authority. Red List Authority will again assess this, the findings or observations of SSV, specialist group, and later publish in the IUCN website. Once it is published in the IUCN website, the assessments can also provision for the challenging. So people working in particular species might have some different of opinion about the status. Such cases, they can raise challenges, and they can accordingly the status can be provision for changing also. And once a species is assessed, there is a reassessment is possible after 10 years, because meanwhile the number of populations may increase. So there is either upgradation or lower status to species can be changed. And for new discoveries, species discovered species, we have to wait at least 10 years for an assessment, because during this period there may be chances of new reports. So if there is no further reports after 10 years, we can give for this assessment. IUCN has also approved some softwares for the submission of assessments. So in this juncture, you can see the Kerala top of the standards. I already mentioned that there are around 270 exclusive endemics are there. In a recent study carried out at KFRI on the endemics, they seen that 53 woody plants are distributed. The significant observation that among the woody species, IUCN status is available only for 7 species. I am telling about the endemics, not the RET species. So many of the endemics presently not have any status, also deserving the conservation status. And likewise, species published 10 years ago, there are 16 species are there. There is no current status is there. So that kind of species to be undergone for threat assessment. And there are another 23 species having extreme low area of occupancy, extent of occurrence, and number of mature individuals. So that species should also go for this assessment, priority or assessment. And another thing is that I already mentioned that RET plants, we have around 550 species And Dr. Shashidharan, a retired scientist of KFRA, has a very good job on the assessment of the species. How the data is yet to reach the IUCN. Of which 100 species are exclusive distribution in the Kerala. Of these 100 species, only 10 species have the IUCN approved status, of which the global status is for 10 and the regional status is only for 23 species. So there is immediate necessity is required on the endemic plants too. They are all deserving the status. These are the 16 species I mentioned that published 10 or above period but lacking status. So we are giving, as per our present study, we are giving status and the criteria also. These are the 23 species having area of occupancy less than 1 kilometer square, extent of occurrence is less than 10 kilometers square, and number of individuals are below 50. And that habitat threats are also evaluated. So these plants are also to be immediately studied for the threat assessment. So once the species is assessed by the IUCN as a threat species, we should go for the species recovery plan. The species recovery is the presentation now I am presenting this based on the field studies. There are some biotechnological role is also there in the species recovery research. Here, major 3 tasks are envisaged. One is on the distribution ecological studies of the species. Another is the development of conservation strategies and guidance on the restoration. Let us see the distribution studies of the species. Here I give an example on Aporosa bodyloni. Aporosa bodyloni have only 3 populations, Thrissur, Trivandrum and Kollam, covering 150 individuals. So extent of occurrence, area of occupancy, habitat threats were studied. The populations were mapped. So here we can also attempt niche modeling of the species. Niche modeling is a computer-aided technology using the probability of occurrence of the species in its distribution range. And this technology also can be used for the reintroducing as new plots, almost matching sites. So this niche modeling is also very important. You can predict the species distribution for which GPS points of the populations are required. Minimum 5 to 6 GPS points are required. And this software have 19 bioclimatic variables. So these GPS points and bioclimatic variables will be given to this using this software, and this finally this ecological niche modeling of species can be produced. Here we can see the Vatica chinensis. So species also seen in the coastal areas. Here we can see the black dots as the GPS points, and the reddish tone is the probable areas of the species, and the reintroduction also can be possible in these areas. So within this distribution and ecological study, the next part is on the ecology. Ecology have major 2 parts of studies. That is, one is the population structure and the other is the population diversity analysis. Population structure, that will cover the stratification, how the species is distributed in its ecosystem, whether it is which strata it is occupied, how it is spatially distributed, whether it is a clump form or a uniform or a and what about the age-wise profile? How many individuals are in the pre-reproductive, how many individuals are in the reproductive, how many are in the senile stages, and the crown coverages of the species. And likewise, the GBH and height measurements. These are all included in the population structural aspects of the species. Another is about the floristry diversity analysis. Normally, this kind of studies are applied using the quadrat method. Normally, 15 to 20 meter quadrats will be laid down, and species will be enumerated, and the frequency, density, dominance will be worked out for the important value index. Finally, we will get the important value index of each species in the particular forest landscape, among which the relative position or relative ranking of the species can be found out. In such a way, we can find out that the occurrence of the species, whether it is a dominant species or a slow species. So here is the tabular representation of how the population structural studies will be conducted. So GBH, all the individual parameters of the species will be worked out in this basal cover, GBH, height. And this is the tabular representation of how the diversity analysis will be worked out, frequency, density, dominance, and finally the IVA value. And Coming to the natural dynamics. Natural dynamics covers both phases of the species. One is on the vegetative phenology, another is about the reproductive phenology. The vegetative phenology will cover all the episodes on the flushing, maturity, senescence, and insect pest incidents. I mentioned there are several biotic interactions in the life cycle of a species, particularly in the dynamics. So many of the butterflies, the larvae will depend on many species, particularly many RETs are depends by this species to complete their life cycle. So such kind of information will be gathered through this. And regarding the reproductive phenology, there are several aspects like pollination, the flower phenology, pollination, pollinators, the pollen-ovule ratio, stigma receptivity, and these parameters will be worked out. Seed dispersal, natural regeneration, insect pest incidence, including the pest incidents. Sometimes the pest will affect the regeneration of the species. So here you can see this flushing behavior of the dry teethers, and this in the Hydnocarpus, the Siroccoa thayas, it's also known as Marotichelabon, depends this species along with some other host plants completing their life cycle. This kind of information will be worked out. And the reproductive phenology, you can see that the reproductive phenology is a very tedious job. You have to find out the ancestors time. So we have to stay sometime in the forest areas within the canopy. So we have to study this bud to flower, flower to fruit ratio. This is the fruit phenology period. Is there any pest incidents during the fruit phenology? How is the regeneration is affected? Whether it is regeneration is there is any predation on the seeds. Like these informations will be covered in this dynamics. So here I show you some of the examples, these insect pest incidents in the threatened plants. In the case of Gluta angurica, the hopper incidents that belong to the family Jacidae, the hoppers suck the juice from the panicle. So subsequently built to the panicle and the number of flowers will be filled out. Likewise in the Calophyllum apetalum, immature fruit fall due to the ineffective pollination process. And in Memisolon, the fruit pest and predation, ground level predators are there. They will eat these, consume these seeds, so thereby affect the regeneration. In the case of Gluta, there is a seed pest belongs to family, this Staphylococcus, like a mango weevil, bore these seeds, and this regeneration is affected. And Cryptocarnus indicus in the Ambultia species. Sometimes fungal infestation. In the case of Acronucleus, food symptoms noticed during northern period in the river bank. So this entire food is pulpy in nature, and this fungus will affect it. The entire seeds will be disintegrated. So here I am showing a case study conducted in Acronucleus, the floral biology of this anthesis. You can see that a single flower in a thalamus had inflorescence, and the corolla structure and the pistil. During 6 p.m., this pistil is gradually coming out to this corolla, and within 1 hour it reaches the corolla throat, where the pulvinous stigma touches the antherlobe, thereby dehiscence of the anther is taking place. So thereafter, with a thick deposit of pollen grains, the stigma is coming out. At the time, the stigma may not be viable, so it is indicating the protrudous nature. So it is facilitating the cross-pollination. So this kind of information is to be conducted, and it has a very important role. What is the reason for the low food set of the species? And another major factor to be analyzed in the ecological studies on the environmental factor analysis. Actually, the climatic and the soil factors. These are optimum in situ requirements of the species. This data will be utilized for the reintroduction of the species in parallel alternate sites of in different forest landscape. Here, atmospheric temperature, canopy temperature, humidity day and night, rainfall, along with the soil texture, soil moisture, soil temperature, soil pH, nutrients levels will be worked out. So this is a tabular representation of how these environmental data are represented. Here we can the year can be divided as season wise, and the season wise temperature and these variables can be recorded. So coming to the task 2, that is on the development of conservation strategies. Here also there is a role on the micropropagation of the species. And here I am projecting the vegetative propagation and the seed propagation. You know, the vegetative propagation is also a very important role in duplicating or multiplying species. where many of the species are passing through the recalcitrant behavior. So maximum care should be given to the clustering selection. If you concentrate one population, the propagules cannot be genetically variable. So for avoiding this, we have to collect the propagules from different habitats or different populations. So from this, viable progenies can be raised. Another parameters to be given is taking care in the age of the parent plant. Age is very critical on success of the rooting of the stem cuttings. So normally, juvenile plants are having better results than aged plants. And standardization of rooting hormones, auxins, which hormones, whether it is IAA or IBA or NA or a combination of these, and optimum concentration, the seasonal influence. Mainly the monsoon period is found to be better. And what is the medium, planting medium is required, whether it is called river sand or along with some supplementary towdon or topsoil is required. What are the necessary conditions given? The facilities. Normally, high humidity, moderate temperature is optimum for maximum success of stem rooting. And the survival of rooted plants or ramets. These are all critical, and the data should be required for a successful vegetative propagation, both for stem rooting and layering experiments. So, coming to this seed propagation, the optimal harvest of the seeds is also very important. Sometimes recalcitrant seeds harvesting, if it is delayed, the viability period of the species also will be reduced during the storage conditions. So there is a processing of the seeds are required, and the moisture content. Moisture content is very critical in determining the viability of the species. If moisture content is the maximum, the percentage germination will be maximum. Thereby we can categorize the seed type, whether it is recalcitrant, orthodox, or intermediate. So there is a critical moisture content level for is available for each species. So we have to find out the critical moisture content, below which the seed will not be germinated. So thereafter, accordingly, the storage conditions will be standardized. And we have to extend, we can extend the viability period after standardizing the storage conditions. So this kind of germplasm storage practice is very important for the extending or storage of recalcitrant for these RET species. As an outcome of these propagation studies, we can see that these seedlings are utilized for the reintroduction in the later case. So there are abnormal seedlings are there. Sometimes polyembryonic conditions. Polyembryonic have also very important role in the genetics. The plant breeding techniques, the haploidy, diploidy nature are all is outcome of this polyembryonic. There's more than one embryo in a particular seed. Sometimes the albinos, viviparous condition. So this I will show it through different slides. So this is one tabular representation of how this vegetative propagation through stem cuttings will be carried out. Here are control sets are there, auxin combinations are there. And the layering, many of the RETs, for example, Syngenbia cyanamycoides, Eristicea species, are very successful in duplicating or multiplying these species through layering methods. And seed propagation, I mentioned that the nursery conditions are using plastic trays or field beds can be used for this multiplication of the species. And this is the standard study used for how to develop a seed propagation protocol for a species. So initial moisture content should be, in the case of the Myristica malabarica, it is 29%. So at that time, the percentage germination will be 100%. We got 100%. And the seed category divided, find out that is recalcitrant, the critical moisture content. We have to reduce the seed OMC through desiccation, drying in room conditions. So accordingly, we understand that the particular MC have the maximum germination and particular MC there is no germination. So where the germination stops, that will be the critical moisture content of the seeds. Normal viability period, how long we can extend the viability period after standardizing the storage practice in a seed bank. So this type of studies are inevitable for a successful seed storage practice of a species. So I mentioned about the seedling morphology. There are polyembryonic conditions in many RET species are there. Albinos are considered as the morphological markers of this local untimely endangerment because it's the outcome of the self-breeding. Once the self-breeding individual shows, the seedling have these albinos. That way these informations are available on this species. So this seedling morphology is very important regarding the RET species, untimely endangerment causes, etc. Sometimes viviparous condition. We know that viviparous is a normal phenomenon in the mangroves. But some non-mangrove species also showing this viviparous, as in the case of gluta. These have wider implications on this, because Cecily said that this is a stress-related issue. In the case of Gluta travancourica, the parental stock is in the Malayan Peninsula, and almost all the species are habitated in marshy lands. Due to continental drift or climatic imbalance, species have been distinct distribution, and this travancourica is settled down in Western Ghats, in the evergreen and shola patches. But thousands of years or years, the species facing some problems to produce its progeny. So the parental history is expressed in the form of vivipary. So this is also indicating the climate changes, how these species are influencing the parental. It's an evolutionary character reflecting its life cycle of the species. So I mentioned this, the presentation is based on the field studies. However, there is a biotechnology tool is very important in the species recovery program. We had some studies with the biotechnology department of KFRI, in which Shidnocarpus longipedulatus and the tuna indica were worked out as part of a PhD program. So the genetic linked characters, if there is a higher genetic diversity, the evolutionary span will be high. So the species will get enough time for its normal process of extinction. But when it is in small populations, low genetic diversity, so that will lead to the genetic depression and the reduction of fertility, growth rate, and susceptibility towards the disease. And there is also minimum viable population concept is also based on this. There is minimum 500 to 1,000 individuals are required as considered as a minimum viable population. There are different biotechnology tools are applied to assess genetic variability, among which these enzyme studies, DNA sequencing are the major tools usually applied for this genetic analysis estimation studies. And apart from this micropropagation of the RET species are also important, but many times the tree species are facing difficulties in developing this protocol. That is a very labor-oriented program. For this, we have to develop a sufficient planting stock in the nursery. We have to transport it to the ideal conditions, in situ conditions, to plant it, and we have to monitor. That's the different episodes on this restoration. The main aim is to re-establish or rehabilitate the destructed plant species from the brink of their extinction to a safe level. There is no further extinction will take place. The process would normally have two processes. That is, one is the introduction, another is on the restocking. Introduction can be carried out in the original habitats, and restocking can be done in the degraded habitats. We are enriching the populations. So whatever the restoration program, before embarking to restoration, there is a thumb rules are there. We should know the ecology of the species, particularly the climate and soil conditions, the phenology, the breeding behavior. These are all prerequisites for effective restoration of the species. Another aspect is on the life history traits. Without knowing the life history traits, we can't do the restoration. How this species dispersed, what time these flowers are opening. This kind of information is very pivotal for the success of the restoration. Likewise, what is the mode of propagation? Whether it has a vegetative sprouting is there, or there is a seeds, what is the nature of germination. So see, these are very inevitable. These are considered some rules for the successful. And once we go for a restoration, definitely we have to take care of several steps, particularly identification in situ location. And we have to take some seedling details from the nursery plants, like the height. So that will be useful for the according to height increments during the subsequent monitoring phases. And the planting sites will be divided into subplots so that we can plant the tagged seedlings for monitoring purpose and transferring the plants, demarcation of the planting area, monitoring of the survival performance, and find out the causal factors affecting the survival. It's also very important. And the subsequent casualty planting for the continuation or success of this restoration. There are many constraints. In our experience, we can say that unpredictable weather change. Some years we have very low monsoon. So normally planting will be carried out at the beginning of this monsoon period. Sometimes the monsoon will be weak. So that will affect the survival. Sometimes the seedling will be wilted, chances of wilting is there. Another is wildlife browsing. Of course, it is in the forest landscape we are planting, but maximum we have to avoid the animal corridors. Otherwise, we will face many damages for this, particularly the elephants, while the pigs are damaging the newly planted areas, species. Once we planted in the open areas or fringes, we have to face the excessive growth of the weeds, particularly some invasive species. So that will suppress the growth of the planted seedlings. Sometimes the pest infestations are there. Here I showed some slides on this Dipracarpus bourdoni saplings. Here the Sahyadras malabarica, the stem borer is affecting. It's a heavy damage happened during the initial stages of the seedling planted because host plant for the that is required for monitoring purpose. Intensive labor, overall the funding. I already mentioned this, much labor oriented. So sufficient funding is also required for the restoration programs. KFRI have some efforts on RET species, threat assessment, restoration, and causes of identifying the rarity reasons. One of the projects here funded by Kerala Forest Department is on the wild networks. Here we concentrated on 5 wildlife species, that is Myristica species as well as Gymnacranthera, including the Myristica strands where the Fatua variety magnifica is distributed. Around 2,000 seedlings of these 5 species were planted in different areas, and we got almost average survival performance of this species, and still we planted during the year 2016, and they're still monitoring the survival performance and also doing some casualty planting in occasional times. And another program, this is the field activity. We are transferring plants from nursery and taking to the field site. It is showing the Malakatara forest areas planting, and the areas demarcated by displaying boards showing the details of the planting. And these restoration programs were conducted through different research projects. So through different projects, we have attended different species, the Quiquidendron pinnatum and the Cyanometra bedomini. We attended one of the research projects. And another DBT funded project was there on the Dipracarpus bourdoni and Humboldtia bourdoni is there. So this Dipracarpus, we got some seedlings, but there is a heavy damage to this stem borer. And this Humboldtia also have some problems with this. Based on the excessive weed growth suppressed because of the delaying in monitoring. So this kind of problems are there. However, we could raise some seedlings. We can see good growing saplings. Manarkad region, we got a very good growth performance of the species, and Drypetes malabarica and Hypnocarpus macrocarpa. And as a crisis management, we can also plant some seedlings in our XCT condition. Now, substances, we tried some planting, and we got also parallelly we raised some seedlings planted as XCT conservation of the species. In addition to this, we also developed a database on RET plants of southern West Ghats, in which 760 RET plants were documented. Around more than 2,000 publications were included in this database. Among these 760 species, nearly 260 species have been attended for some kind of studies. That is around 35% of species so far attended for some kind of studies. The remaining species are still untouched. So the researchers can browse this site and select their species so that we can avoid the duplication of studies. Many times, different organizations attending same species. So that kind of information is duplicating, so that we can avoid duplication of studies by searching this website. Now it is available in the KFRI website. So coming to the summary and conclusion, Regarding the threat assessments, conservation or threat assessment of species should be followed as per IUCN guidelines that can be either global or national level, and assessments should be given to IUCN for publication so that ambiguity can be avoided. Once it is IUCN published, so there will be no question raised whether it is really threatened or not. And regarding the narrow endemic, that is another area we have to investigate. Now we are concentrating only the enlisted RET to threat assessments, reassessment. But there is another number of plants on endemics, narrow endemics, deserving its status and prioritize for conservation studies. There are many species that are pending or need required threat assessments, and trust also to be given for the RETs which have an exclusive distribution in the Kerala part. That's about the threat assessments program. And another is about the understanding the causes of rarity. Since plant rarity revolves around the ecology and biology of the species, population biological studies have an eminent role on analyzing the cause of rarity. We have conducted more than a dozen of species in this line. So there are several new informations are there, particularly this population dynamics. You can see number of biotic interactions and this the reproductive biological data is there. The third, regarding the conservation, the study focused to increase the population size of the species. So development of population protocol is a top priority area of the study. Without a multiplication of species, we can't enrich the genetic. Thus, we can't enrich the sinking populations. Finally, the augmentation, monitoring, and delisting of the species. Enrichment or creation of new populations of threatened plants in due course enable to revise the threat status of the species. Subsequent delisting of the species from the extinction risk category of plants. So with this, I am concluding the presentation and sincerely thankful to my research guide and the director, KFRI, the research coordinator, and my fellow colleagues, scientists of KFRI. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Jules. There are a few questions which has come up in the chat box. The first question is from Dr. Chandrasekhara. He asks that some species are being cultivated and used extensively, but still they are considered under RET category. What is the reason for this?
RETs, we can try some cultivation programs, whether it is habitat is compatible to this. But once it is cultivating, the number of population increase, we have to give subsequent reassessment on the species. Once it is established well, number of individuals will be high, we can revise the status. So cultivation of that is doing in the ex situ. We are planting the seedlings and increasing the number of individuals and extent of occurrence. So it's also possible, but at the same time, we should give the reassessment, revision in the reassessment. Accordingly, the data we can submit and we revise the status.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So the next question is from me. I was just wanted to ask whether the albino seeds which you referred,
yes,
are they dysfunctional or is just a question of color?
Yeah, albinos not the longer period, within 1 or 2 months it will perish because of lack of chlorophyll. But this albinos is treated as an indicator of this self-pollination. So that is outcome. So that is giving a signal the species are undergoing this untimely endangerment. That's all.
Thank you, Joe. The next question from Dr. Chandrasekhara. He says that extinction rates are predicted to rise due to climate change. But many of such predictions ignore physiological plasticity that may buffer species from extinction. Are there attempts to assess physiological plasticity of the species that fall under RET category in the Western Ghats?
So far, physiological data about this kind of, as sir mentioned, is not considered or not treated for this extinction risk analysis. So that parameter can also be included because this, I've shown some slide on this viviparine, this non-mangrove species. So these are all indicating the species facing the stress regarding the dynamics. So this kind of information can also be included in our species recovery program. So also sometimes, even though it is environmentally induced, sometimes maybe genetically. So we have to look into this, which actual factor is influenced. Accordingly, we can also include this kind of information for the extinction risk analysis. Thank you for this new information.
The next question is from Dr. Raghu. He asks whether in situ conservation methods can be useful, but it can only be done as a temporary arrangement. For example, cultivation is associated with the economy of the crop at that time. What alternative method would you suggest in this? I had just talked to Raghu to explain the question better. What he says is that when you propagate a particular species and plant it outside, that will give a short window where the species may be surviving. But in a long term, what is going to be the impact of the restoration program?
Actually, the question is not clear. I think he's pointing towards whether this cultivation of the species can reduce this rarity of the species. I didn't get actual what he's pointing this. Will you please repeat this, Sajid sir? Can you?
He's asking the first question which he asked is regarding the in situ conservation methods can be useful, but he is concerned about the usefulness of the method in the long term, a very long term.
In situ is considered as the best option because all the parameters, including the in situ soil, climate, associates, altitudinal regimes, all are matching to this target species. So in situ is the only viable method. Sometimes we can think about the ex situ conservation, but it may not be viable. Sometimes after flowering, fruit may not be viable. So in situ is the best option for the raising of these certain plants. As a crisis management part, we can think our developing small population in the ex situ. I think in situ can be adopted as the best option for it. So long term also there is a benefit for the establishment of new populations. I think Dr. Raghu got the actual reply from my side.
Yeah, Dr. Jose, I think you have answered it, but then the concern which remains is that the reasons for a plant to go in low in numbers and to become an RET species still remains in the in situ condition. So whatever factors led to its decline is still remaining in the environment. So even if you plant a few more trees, how can it survive in the long term? That's the question.
Yeah. So we can do only increasing the populations. So there are agris are there. There are some existing problems are there. Fragmentation is there. However, as far as possible, we have to enrich. We should enrich the degraded population as well as creation of new population in distribution range of the species. So there may be some amount of plants will be survived. Otherwise, we have to think about the pooling of bioresources, reservoir of gene pools. So the fragmentation should be minimized. The landscapes developmental activities reduced. So these are very difficult in our present scenario. So even though there are problems existing, we have to go for enrichment of the degraded population and creation of new population. There may be some problems may arise. However, we have to exercise, then only we can increase the number of individuals. Otherwise, there is no meaning in doing this because our ultimate target is to increase the number of dingling populations. So there may be some problems may exist. We have to give sufficient protection there. Sometimes we have to give, should do in the protected areas. We have to select the sites for this enrichment program. We have to avoid the reserve forest areas where habitat distribution is going to be more. So we have to give protection at least in the early stages, 5 to 6 years. Later, this species will grow. Even if there may be some disturbance will be there. So we have to give monitoring continuously the replacement, casualty planning. So I think this in-city is the best option. Even though the disturbance are there, we have to go our efforts to continue in increasing the number of populations.
Yeah, yes, Dr. Jose. In fact, Dr. Raghuvar made it clear about the confusion between the in situ and ex situ, the terminology which was being used by Raghu in the question. And we also have a comment from Dr. Pandurangan. Hello, welcome you, sir. Dr. Pandurangan says, ex situ is only temporary or to overcome crisis management. In situ will serve for long-term conservation. That is his comment from Dr. Pandurangan. How do you respond, Dr. Jose?
Yes, that is why I mentioned that in situ is the final option for increasing the population. Ex situ is a part of crisis management. We can raise species if once the problems continuing in the in situ, there is a chances are there. So we have to create populations in ex situ. That is the concept of botanic gardens, arboreta, the parks. Everywhere we are developing gene pools, gene banks of RETs. So thereby we can give alternate stocking of these RETs in ex situ. So we can educate students, we can give awareness to public. Simultaneously, in situ planting programs will continue. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that completes the list of questions which we have received in the chat box. I move over to Dr. Shyam Vishwanath, Director, for his institutional remarks.
One of the things,
Yes.
one interesting thing, digital presentation, which needs, I would say, detailed investigation, is the way the user count has shown some ecological paths. Nowadays, we have seen now, Dr. Joseph has observed that we will have a presentation.
Yeah.
Now, what I was considering that it could be due to stress, moisture, or due to elevated temperature, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. I think probably open cloud chambers to be led to ascertain this concept of this. So such species, these kind of things are really can be subjected to these studies in open cloud chambers. We have facilities like hydrochloric acid, FGTB, and also current. So studies should be taken. And overall, if I would like to summarize what Dr. Joseph said, he has actually done quite a bit on this rare and endangered rare and threatened species. Listed around 760 species. And in Kerala alone, around 270 edible plants have been recorded. And Dr. Jose has compiled a list of 57 woody endemic plants in a book form, which is going to be released shortly. And regarding the species recovery program, he has emphasized the need for studying the basic distribution ecology before devising a conservation strategy, and then the ultimate, the third step, the restoration program. So, which is very comprehensive, and we have listed how this has to be carried out, and also what are the pitfalls in this restoration program. In summary, what he has highlighted 4 points. One is that when you are assessing the threat, obligation of threat assessment when you are doing it, please follow IUCN guidelines. So that there is no ambiguity there. And also, you need to have a better understanding of the plant rarity. It is actually there. Is there any other ambiguity attached to that? That needs to be clear. And then the third point which is first is the development of propagation protocols. Which itself is a very comprehensive thing. It's not that easy. You have to follow certain guidelines, right from the pollination biology, reproductive behavior, so on and so forth. And the last ultimate goal would be to augment, monitor the status that we are doing the recovery program, and then ultimately it is leading to the delisting of the species from the rare endangered status. That is the final goal. So I think on the whole it has been a real eye-opener. So I'm sure that we have the audience also enjoyed the presentation and some good observations. I'd like to thank Dr. Jose.
Thank you, sir.
There's a one late question from Pavitra. She asked how a scientist can implement the public participation strategies for conservation of endangered species.
Yeah, it's a good question. Can explain with the Myristica swamps. Myristica swamps are now decreasing in alarming rate. So the major reason is on the encroachment of the land or conversion of land for some other purpose. So we given awareness classes to the local people residing in these Myristica swamp areas. So once the people is convinced about the importance of the species, they can surely conserve the species. And once they're moving around, what kind of interventions there? So there is sufficient support from the local participants, very important for the conservation of RETs, where the tribal settlements or these people are residing. So that we can include that persons during the reintroduction program or a planting program. And we can also give training how to conserve these plants, what we are going to do this, and what is the significance of species. We had some training programs while we reintroducing nutmegs in these Myristica swamps as well as in the forest areas, where we attended, where we included all the Vana Samrakshana Samadi members, and their participation was very interesting. And they themselves told that it's a new experience to them. These are importance are available to the species. So it's a very important. Local participation is also determined the success of restoration program.
I'll cite an example from Karnataka, where farmers had actually removed this freshwater swamps and converted into arecanut plantation. So there was a massive program because that is due to lack of awareness, without understanding the ecological importance of the freshwater swamps. So many areas were converted, lost irrevocably, and Dr. Vasudeva, College of Forestry, spearheaded a program in that area, and also ATU was also involved in that, educating the farmers through awareness program, highlighting the importance of freshwater swamps for getting clean water rather than converting it into diverting it from the land use. That's a typical example of that the work that has been carried out.
Thank you.
Okay, Pavitra has asked whether there is any such illustration available in Kerala, any such models of restoration in Kerala with people's participation. Are there any illustrations or models available in Kerala of restoring a species using people's participation?
Yeah, this I mentioned about this wild nutmegs we had conducted in the Myristica swamps as well as the forest fringes where these tribal communities are residing, because they are using the seed aril of the species. So we thought ignoring the importance how the seeds will germinate. So they will simply collect this aril and throw away the seeds. So after maturation, only the seeds should be collected, and after collection of this aril should be deposited in the forest land, it will germinate. So that kind of information we given during the reintroduction time. So that can be treated as a model for the success of this species.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Jose. You have answered to almost all the questions which we have received. Thanks to Dr. Jose for the nice presentation and the interaction. Thanks to Dr. Shyam Vishwanath, Director KFRA, for giving the institutional remarks. And thanks to all the participants. We'll be posting you the details of the next webinar as soon as possible. Be with us. Stay tuned. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.